Welcome everybody, here Brady from BGWX, and we're back here for another breakdown of what is I think has a chance to be another meaningful, impactful winter storm for the eastern U.S. Coming here this weekend. But I will preface this by saying it is not a guarantee at all, and I will briefly put some recap thoughts on what occurred today as well, and how we got verification of the forecast. So we got a lot to break down here. So without further ado, let's get started. I know we have vested interest all over the East Coast with people watching here in this video. So first, though, I will say, though, in regards to our current storm, remember we were talking about it. Look at the soundings we pulled here from this storm. Take a look here. The amazing heavy snow sounding this is, and you can clearly see. I'll explain why. Here is why this turned into a historic snowstorm and not just what would I would call it. It would have been a major blockbuster, but this turned into a historic storm because of what happened from about five. Now, I would say not just that. It was the consistent snow we had during that period as well, from about the continued snow that happened after about 12 to 1 a.m. continued, and then the band we had midday as well, and the continued snow after that. And then once we got to around 4 to 5 p.m., we had this banding like we were predicting that just got going over these places here. I'm going to switch to black. I like better contrast color there. And we predicted this for days on stream when we were looking at the coastal redevelopment, and we realized, hey, the coastal redevelopment isn't going to be some massive storm on the backside, but it is going to be a storm, basically a whole new storm. Basically, I mean, I saw a widespread, I think 2 to 5, 3 to 6 inches, I think, from a lot of reports here, basically from here eastward, from basically Worcester County eastward, from about 4 to 12, and then even then it just kept snowing, running out. It still might be snowing actually on Cape Cod right now. I can do a check, and it seems like it's finally wrapped up here as of 5 a.m. But in which was almost a 42-hour storm for some people. I mean, a long duration event here. But take a look at the lift in the dendritic growth zone. But also look at where your dendritic growth zone is. Your dendritic growth zone now, at the top of it is around 650, and the core of it is about 700 millibars. And the core of it from about 700 to, give or take, let's say this. I mean, minus 10, you really almost never get there until the bottom of the surface. But minus 12, maybe you get close to there, and then minus 10, you get right above the surface. So your dendritic growth zone is just above the surface, and it has some, it's pretty. It's not shallow. It's a deep layered DGZ, meaning there's a lot of time for these snowflakes to accumulate, and then you have right here in the dendritic growth zone, you have all this lift right here. And so that allows the snowflakes to continue to accumulate. So, when we look at these soundings here, we say, okay, what does the final result end up meaning? And this means that we could get heavy snow here because we are well saturated here in the dendritic. You see that? Well saturated all the way down to the surface. And we have over -1, nearly -2 omega almost. And look at the temperatures at the surface too, 17 degrees. All of these combined suggest we were going to get more heavy snow. And certainly we did. We ripped our heaviest band of the storm, for me personally, over 2 inches an hour. And that was able to get me to 24 inches of snow, seeing a lot of 18 to like 28-inch snowfall totals, and we'll see what everybody has to report in the morning, and we'll do a snow map grade then. But in regards now for the upcoming system, take a look at what we have going on now. I just wanted to recap that. Truly a historic storm. Boston, for those of you that know, I think we'll finish 8th all time with that snowstorm. Worcester, I think, will finish 9th or 10th. And Providence, I think, will be in the top 10 as well, We said this has the potential to be a historic southern New England snowstorm. Certainly lived up to that. Boston saw over 23, Worcester over 22, almost 23. I might be wrong. I think Providence, I'm seeing a lot of like 16 to 20-inch totals, that's a solid storm for Providence. Now, looking at this storm, there are some things that have me leaning towards this happening, but let me preface this by saying it's a very high risk, high reward setup. Now, I think regardless, and the Carolinas are going to like what I have to say here, maybe, Chesapeake Bay into Southeast Virginia as well. Regardless, I think you can get some snow out of this for the Carolinas. I think you do, regardless of how strong this were to develop. I think you can get some snow out of this. But take a look what we have happening on. Okay, this is current mid-level or low. Is it? Yes, current mid-level water vapor. So basically, looking around where we like to, 500 millibars in the atmosphere. And so what stands out here, if we take a screenshot so we can draw on it, is here's our storm wrapping up here. You can clearly see, look at the tail, the moisture feed still in the system, an incredibly impactful system that, is producing snow all the way from, here in the Rockies, Montana, down the south into the southwest, and really impacted all of these states. Just a true high impact event here, brought insane cold air to these places, and you can clearly see the cold air entrenched here now in behind our system. This is all Arctic air. It is going to be frigid this week across a lot of places and colder below average across the eastern U.S. But notice the amplification here in the Pacific. That's what stands out. This is all connected, and wonder, do we have another storm approaching the Bering Strait here? Boy, oh boy, could this be an active pattern. But the amplification, the Rossby wave pattern in the Pacific, you see that, just continuing to have such an amplification pattern here. You see the continued amplification, but you also notice a little bit still of that split flow where, potentially, at some point, maybe we could have another Bahalo, I guess. Maybe it's at some point, if we were just looking at satellite there, just based on the split flow look we have, is that something could slide into here, and that could possibly inject into the jet stream at some point. Maybe that's our Bering Strait connection come next week. I think there is another storm threat for next week, just based on the fact that we have a good pattern. Doesn't mean we'll convert it, just saying that, between the Bering Strait signal that we have, there's a signal, and then maybe the week after, we're in a very active pattern. Subtropical moisture feed here. Look at the active MJO active, favorable phases of the MJO active. Basically, all that means is we currently have favorable subtropical moisture feed along in the tropics. In the tropical convection, we track that, and oftentimes can play a factor for our snowstorms and cold and winter weather across the eastern U.S. But look at the subtropical moisture feed we have already. Now, since, we have this, high pressure dominating over a lot of the U.S. Currently with this cold air, and from the backside now, it's a little bit, it's drying up a little bit, not ready to quite inject itself into across the stream as of now, but this is ready. This is strong. This is coherent. This is put together, and it has a long tail as well. This is what stands out. We are going to have an active subtropical moisture feed, and then the amplification in the Pacific is what really stands out as well, connected to our Japan teleconnection. And this is going to end up sliding down, as we're going to have and we'll show you here how this ends up playing out. Is what we're going to have end up playing out here is in behind our system. And I'll just use, you guys probably see the model runs a little bit better than that, but in behind our system we have a clipper coming in that will produce a little bit of snow. Keep an eye. This is not a clipper that is going to so insanely overproduce though, but there are actually some decent, you could pick up a bit of snow. There could be some intense period, almost a little snow squall like for some places, even as into Connecticut, maybe Massachusetts. We'll keep an eye on that, but this is what sets the stage, because what happens is we have this, you see the polar vortex lobe to the north, there you see by Hudson Bay, and that is what's going to slide on through. slide on through. And we have an active subtropical moisture feed, and we do see you have a little bit of that split flow there with that western ridge. We are going to get a piece to inject there, so it's almost again another three-piece system here where we have a split flow, we have a northern branch, and this, this might be the pattern. We have a three-piece phasing pattern here potentially, and that could be. You see, look at the active subtropical moisture feed we have going on. This is the we have the clipper out in front, sets the stage, and then we have this piece really connected right from the polar vortex lobe, rolling on in from behind. And then we have this piece that split off here because due to this massive western ridge here in the amplification. But notice the height on the western ridge here. Very impressive. That gives time for for our northern branch to slide down and give time for these three to come together. We're going to have a storm. Question is, where exactly? Is this going to scrape? Is this going to hit? Is this going to slide offshore? I lean against offshore. I lean towards a scrape or a hit. That's what I lean. That's not a low pressure track. That's just a storm hit track. I lean towards a hit, and this could have impacts all the way up and down the East Coast. Very well could. This is not favored for an inland solution because I'll show you the just the precipitation. Now, what we're going to have here is, I'm not going to play it anymore, but notice the high. I don't want to play it too much more. This is the ensemble signal. The ensemble signal is there. No matter what the operationals are doing, the ensemble signal remains consistent. Is that, take a look at the, you can clearly see the amplification, the western ridge, above average temperatures here, and then look at we have the high north of New England, classic, just like we had for this storm, and then we have the high wrapped around. We have this western ridge, so we have here in the flow here. This is as classic as you can get for a flow for a major East Coast snowstorm, and what could potentially be, if it were to hit, a blizzard. There's a lot to figure out there out here, but we do have high pressure to the north, so that's gonna, I think, prevent in the western ridge is pretty impressive as well. Note the ridge access here. You guys peep the ridge here. Our friend Joey always likes to say the Montana Ridge, and there is some truth to that, but just the western ridge here, and that access, that length, that height to it is what really allows to promote the amplification, the pattern, and allow this northern stream to bend, to kind of bend back in here. However, if we were to see this kind of start to extend more this way, then that would potentially promote, the storm being able to slide off more, especially if we were lacking stream separation here as well. That would also play a huge factor in the storm not being able to produce as much as we thought it could. So you see the stream separation, you see the blue here, the white and the blue. If you were to see blue connected to blue, we would not get a snowstorm likely for many places up here, and would be much more limited, I would say. We would have to really, it just honestly probably won't happen. Also note the Atlantic ridging present as well. So we'll have to really pinpoint what exactly but these are the pieces on the table here. Those are the things you watch from model guidance. Now, in terms of current analysis, if I slide back, I can use this, and then I can show you the analysis tools. Remember what we like to come back to. We like to come back to sea surface temperatures, because this oftentimes play a role. Take a look here in the North Atlantic. Notice our sea surface temperature gradient. Okay? Notice our sea surface temperature gradient. I'll take a screenshot for you right here, and you can notice same thing we were talking about. We're talking about this gradient for the previous storm. We're talking about the low pressure weak one kind of riding and then sliding out. We also were talking about that for the one over a week ago, about 8 days ago at this point now. How we are saying I'm favoring it, because look at the sea surface temperature track here. This is the gradient we have set up here. Now, potentially if we were to ride out this one, that would, would still get you something here, but it would not be as notable of an event. It would get some snow, maybe even into the Carolinas, but would not be as notable an event. But I think based on the pattern we have here is we can get this to ride up enough, this gradient, and then eventually be able to try to ride the gradient along the benchmark. And that could really support the potential for this storm. If it's able to get anywhere near the benchmark, watch out. Watch out. We could have a major snowstorm, a blizzard. This would be a high impact event, likely the event we're talking about, whether it be 1 or 2 or 3, I don't know, but we'd be talking about feet of snow potentially if this were to hit. Now it's possible this could also be a scraper. Let's say if we were to ride out closer to here, then maybe this could be a coastal scraper as well. That's certainly possible. I lean towards those two solutions at the moment, but listen, model guidance will waver back and forth. We got to stay consistent with our thoughts here, but I think we're going to get something to ride up, something close, and then either close to this gradient or this gradient. And that would be a significant difference in terms of impacts for places all along the East Coast. Spots I favor, I think are best in line right now, could potentially be somewhere like there and there. Those are the highest. You have the most margin for error. However, all of these places are absolutely in line, and maybe further back, I guess. I don't know. You could extend it, but my point is this. All up and down the East Coast is what we're watching right now, and in theory could extend back. So this is potential to be a high impact event here. Certainly would, we would be watching for the B word. We like to throw out the blizzard potential. That is certainly, I guess, in theory on the line here. You have your Euro AI, can show you that as well. If I go here to 500 millibars, you can see that, see how it loads up. Boom, shows a major snowstorm. Not even necessarily right on, probably just southeast of the benchmark. Right, almost riding the secondary gradient, very close to that. And look, you see what would happen? You would still get a major snowstorm in southern New England there, even if we were to ride that gradient, and you would get it in the Carolinas. So that's something to note there. And then if you go to the ensemble as well, boom, you can kind of see a similar idea. But you see the problem with the set. Not the problem, it could be the very best thing, but you see you see the risk here is that if you do not get these pieces to line up favorably just enough, it could all go wrong, and you could be looking at barely a coastal scraper, if anything, which is certainly possible. So this is a really high risk, high reward setup here, and it's not something I think really anyone for at least another day or so can have high confidence in. I think what sets up here as the clipper rolls through, I think it becomes a lot clearer then. I think it becomes a lot clearer on what exactly is likely to become with this progression here, with this system. But until that point, it's going to be hard to pinpoint exactly what's going to be happening. So we will get there, but it's just for the moment, it's going to be a little bit tricky. So we just got to kind of be patient here. So for the moment, I can only favor and lean right now. I can't confidently say that this is absolutely going to happen, but I will say the confidence has increased a little bit since yesterday. Confidence has increased a little bit since yesterday. The potential with the system is absolutely there. If you notice, one thing I do like, given the performance of the AI models, again, they're just a tool, so I don't rely on them, but take note here. Look at the trend on the AI GFS. Look at the difference there. You see that? Almost looks like a model run instead of a loop. Increasing the height of the western ridge, increasing the height of the Atlantic ridge, promoting amplification, the pieces getting more out in front to favor a more favorable phase of the phasing of the system. A gorgeous gorgeous, gorgeous trend if you want to see a snowstorm, if you want to see the result of the precipitation map, what that kind of does. Take a look. Compare runs. Look at that. You see the difference? Boom. And it's why Southern New England has a little bit margin for error. They have a little bit more margin for error with the system to see the highest ceiling, I think. But I also think North Carolina may have the highest margin for error. And specifically, Eastern North Carolina might have the highest margin for error to see accumulating snow out of this. Just as a result of the orientation of the system, it's going to be happening like literally right on top of the Carolinas. So there's also a really high risk, high reward, not in the sense of I think that you don't see anything, in the sense of you could see maybe a little bit of snow and you could see one of your bigger snowstorms in recent memory, if not recent memory, but maybe of all time. Is not out of the question, but trying to hone down those specifics, I don't know, because it could also very well, the best totals could be to your north there in the southeast. So I wouldn't really be focusing too much on totals right now. If you're living in those places, just be focusing on the idea that there's something to track here. And we're going to have to be watching this very, very closely, as there is a potential for a major snowstorm. The timing of that would be Saturday, Sunday, and Monday would be the timing for this system. And there's the pieces still need to be set in stone. As you can see, one last thing I'll add in, just because I feel like I'm going to be mentioning it in the future, is notice anytime you have this pattern with this western ridge, usually pieces come in late and fast. Here, GFS, I think the operational is really off. GFS is not going to do well until for a little bit. Probably keep in mind, regardless of the results it shows, because of the pattern we're in. It's the late fat. It's just gotten worse and worse, or actually it's been the same, and other guidance has gotten better, in my opinion. No matter the upgrades they did a few years ago or whatever, other guidance has gotten better. GFS really has not much in terms of this specifics of the pattern, late fast flow. So that's my current thoughts on the system. We'll have more to break down. I'll try my best to keep you updated. In the meantime, we'll do a snow map grade at some point here, a forecast grade total. It was pretty successful, so I'm happy about that, even though still wasn't perfect. There's still some room to improve on some of the specifics, but I thought we did a really good job, especially the messaging, the forecasting, the areas I was looking at. Overall, I was happy with that, and then a major pattern here that we're in, just continuing the potential for storms. So without further ado, that's all I got. Peace, everybody.